United is turning challenges into collective strengths, love and loss into solidarity, and diagnosis into community. United is supporting one another, advocating for change, and driving progress towards a cure. United is holding each other up, sharing in the hardships and in the hope, and honoring the people we've lost by showing up for everyone who is still here. Together, across Canada, we are united in ALS.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to Leave a Legacy Month. My name is Chris Pond, and I'm the VP of Fund Development at ALS Canada. Today, nearly 4,000 Canadians are living with ALS. ALS Canada is grounded in the lived experience of the Canadian ALS community, which is at the heart of everything we do. At ALS Canada, we are determined to transform the reality of the disease. We do this by working with the ALS community to improve the lives of Canadians affected by ALS through advancing research, care, advocacy, and information. Thank you for joining us today on our journey towards a world free of ALS. Before we start, let's go through some housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, but if any questions come up along the way, feel free to pop them into the chat. We will be sharing the presentation with you after, so please don't feel you need to write down all the information. With that said, I am pleased to introduce our guest speakers. We're excited to welcome back Jandy John for the third time, the Director of Estates and Trusts at Concentra Trust Equitable Bank, and our colleague Selena Gustakowski, Director Registered Plans at Concentra Trust Equitable Bank, and they will take you through today's presentation. So with that said, I am happy to pass it along to you, Jandy and Selena.
Excellent, thank you. Jandy, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, everything looks good.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Jandy and I are very excited to share some of the information with you today. Just get my screens organized. 1 second. Go. So you'll note at the top of this slide is Jandy and my contact information. If you have any further questions after the webinar, etc., please feel free to reach out to us. I'll also provide a contact slide at the end of my RDSP discussion so that you can contact our client support team if you have questions also. So today we're going to discuss RDSPs, Canada Disability Savings Grant and Bond, and then Henson Trusts. And I will start the presentation today speaking on RDSPs, and then I'll hand it over to Jandy for the Henson Trust. RDSPs, I have to say this is a product that I'm very, very passionate about. I have personal experience with registered disability savings plans, as I have a younger brother that has a disability, and I've seen the benefit that it has provided to him. It actually was a game changer for my little brother when he opened up his registered disability savings plan. So I am also the director of registered plans. So I work with a team of experts here at Concentra to ensure that we can provide RDSPs to individuals all across Canada, as well as a lot of other registered plan products. So generally speaking, a registered disability savings plan can be opened by an individual for themselves or for a family member or another individual that has a disability. And in order to open up an RDSP, individuals must qualify for the disability tax credit. They have to be under the age of 60 years. They have to be a Canadian resident, and they have to have a valid social insurance number. And once an individual opens up goes through the process of opening up an RDSP after they've been approved for the disability tax credit. It's really a very easy program or product to manage, as you fill in the forms generally once, and your applications for grant, bond, everything else is just automatic. It's all taken care of behind the scenes between the financial institution and the federal government. So once individuals are applying for and receive the disability tax credit, it's a non-refundable tax credit that helps people with a disability or those who support them to reduce the amount of income tax that they have to pay or taxable income that they have to claim. To apply for the disability tax credit, there is a CRA form that is completed, and it's completed by the individual or the individual's legal representative or guardian, and by a medical practitioner, such as a doctor, nurse practitioner, occupational therapist, etc. So it is a little bit of it is a lengthy form, I guess you could say, but it does gather all of the information that is required for CRA to make a determination if an individual would qualify for the disability tax credit. Once they have the disability tax credit, as I said, they're eligible to open up an RDSP, and it also reduces their taxable income. There's many different disabilities that could qualify for the disability tax credit. Ultimately, it is the CRA's decision whether a person does receive the disability tax credit or not. But I actually went through the application process with my brother when we got him disability tax credit approved. And as a family, we sat down and we went through that form to, make jot notes, etc. So when he went to his medical appointment, it was a lot easier, as we as a family knew a lot more about my brother Cody than the doctor did, right? Just some of the obstacles that he faced in his day-to-day living, etc. So, don't be scared to rely on other individuals or assist other individuals in going through that application process. So who can open up an RDSP? So an RDSP generally has two individuals that are named. One is the holder, and the holder is the one that opens up the RDSP, and they name the beneficiary. Now, a holder can be both the holder and the beneficiary, but there are different qualifications required in order to determine who would be the beneficiary and who would be the holder. So under all circumstances, when the beneficiary is a minor, so the individual that has the disability, if they are a minor, they are under the age of majority, the holder has to be a legal parent or a legal representative. If the beneficiary, the individual with the disability, is an adult, there are three determining factors that have to be considered to know who the holder can be. So if that individual with the disability is contractually competent, they can be both the beneficiary and the holder. If the adult is not contractually competent, then it has to be a legal representative that is the holder of their registered disability savings plan. And if the adult beneficiary, if their contractual competency is in question, then there is the ability for a qualifying family member to become the holder of their RDSP. And that qualifying family member could be either their legal parent, their spouse or common law partner, or an adult sibling. So it allows individuals to have supporting people to assist them with opening up a registered disability savings plan if they need it. Now, there's lots of myths out there about registered disability savings plans, and I would like to share some of them with you today. We have done a lot of promotion of registered disability savings plans because we understand how underutilized they are across Canada. There are so many people that could qualify to open up a registered disability savings plan, and many of them don't. And a lot of it is due to the myths that are out there, such as you need lots of money to open up an RDSP. RDSPs are beneficial for individuals of all levels of income, and low to moderate beneficiaries actually get both grant and bond paid into their registered disability savings plan. And I learned that firsthand with my little brother. When we opened up his registered disability savings plan, he qualified for the bond contribution from the federal government, and he didn't even have to contribute any money for that to come in. So you don't have to have a lot of money to open up an RDSP. You can save just as much outside of an RDSP. We're going to talk in a couple of minutes about the grant and bond and the amounts that can be contributed to an RDSP by the federal government. And it's up to $90,000 between grant and bond entitlement for individuals. So when you start adding those grant and bond monies onto contributions, that money grows very quickly within the registered disability savings plan. RDSPs are only for severe disabilities. So RDSPs are available for Canadian residents that qualify for the disability tax credit. And that's a wide range of disabilities. A few years ago, the federal government updated their disability tax credit eligibility requirements to include mental health, which was really good to see because there's lots of different types of disabilities out there that could qualify. RDSPs are too complicated to manage. So the long-term financial benefits of an RDSP outweigh the complexity. So when you open up a registered disability savings plan, there are quite a few forms that have to be signed at the very beginning of it. But as I said earlier, the management of it becomes very simple because grant and bond entitlement is automatically paid into an individual's RDSP every year as long as they file their income tax return on an annual basis. RDSPs can only be used for retirement. Funds can be withdrawn from an RDSP and used for any purpose. So lots of people think of a registered disability savings plan being similar to a registered education savings plan. So for the education savings plan, obviously you're taking the money out for supporting an individual that's going to school. But for the registered disability savings plan, it can be used for any purpose at all. And only parents can make contributions to an RDSP. Contributions can be made by anyone as long as the holder gives written consent for an individual to make contributions. It can be parents, family, friends, cousins, anyone that wants to make a contribution to an RDSP on behalf of a beneficiary has the ability to do so. So RDSP contributions, individuals can contribute up to $200,000 into a registered disability savings plan. There is no annual contribution limit. Individuals can contribute any amount throughout a calendar year. And one thing to note, though, is that when money is contributed into an RDSP, it's not tax deductible. So it's not like a registered retirement savings plan where you would get an official receipt to reduce your taxable income. It is money that is put into the RDSP after tax dollars that are contributed. And when those contributions are withdrawn, they're not taxable income either. Contributions are for the benefit of the beneficiary and they cannot be withdrawn by the holder. So as I stated earlier, anybody can make contributions to an RDSP on behalf of a beneficiary, and they're considered to be like a gift because ultimately that beneficiary is the only one that's entitled to the funds in the RDSP when the withdrawal is made. Deadlines. So individuals can make contributions into their RDSP up until the age of 59. So on December 31st of the year they turn 59, that is the deadline for any contributions to the RDSP contract. And contribution deadline for the current calendar year is the 365-day calendar year. And in order for individuals to receive grant and bond, they have to make contributions before December 31st of the year the beneficiary attains age 49. And I'm going to talk about both the grant and bond in detail to explain why that age 49 becomes relevant. So the Canada Disability Savings Grant allows individuals to receive free money from the federal government, and that free money can be up to $70,000. And what can happen is if an individual maximizes their grant entitlement, they can receive up to $3,500 annually. And it's paid based on contributions that an individual makes into their registered disability savings plan. There is a qualification that the beneficiary has to be a resident of Canada. They have to be eligible for the disability tax credit and have a valid social insurance number. But the Canada Disability Savings Grant, the amount that the federal government contributes is pretty eye-opening actually, because it's a matching grant of 100, 200, or 300% of contributions that an individual makes to their RDSP. And the percentage that they're entitled to is based on the net family income of the beneficiary. So when they're a minor, it's their parents' net family income. But once that beneficiary reaches the age of majority and they're an adult, now it is based on their individual net family income. So when the beneficiary turns age 19, it's going to be based on their income. And as you can see, there's if an individual's net family income is $117,045 or less, they can receive matching grant of 300 or 200%. And if it is over $117,045, then they still get 100% matching grant on the first $1,000 that they contribute to their RSP or RDSP. On a personal note, with my little brother Cody, for his registered disability savings plan, because of his income bracket, he is in that first category where he's getting 100 or 200% on every dollar that he puts into his registered disability savings plan. So his savings grow quite quickly. Now, the Canada Disability Savings Bond, there are no contributions required for individuals to receive bond money, and they can receive up to $1,000 per year, and the lifetime maximum amount would be $20,000. And individuals, again, have to meet the residency, DTC, and requirements, as well as have a valid social insurance number. And again, the application must be made on or before December 31st of the year the beneficiary turns age 49. So as a general rule, the money that is received from the federal government that is grant or bond money has to mature in the registered disability savings plan for a 10-year period before it's withdrawn. Now, there are special circumstances under shortened life, which we'll talk about shortly, but otherwise, those dollars are to mature in the RDSP for a 10-year period. If they don't, there is some repayment requirements to the federal government. But the bond entitlement is based on individuals' net family income also. So again, in this situation, my little brother is in the top row where his net family income is less than $38,237. So every year he automatically gets $1,000 of bond paid into his registered disability savings plan. So his savings grow very, very quickly for his registered disability savings fund. And you can see that for individuals that are between 38,237 or 58,523, there's a calculation that's done to determine what amount of that $1,000 they would receive. And if an individual's net family income is more than the 58,523, there's no Canada Disability Savings Bond paid. If an individual was deemed to be disability tax credit eligible for years prior to them opening up a registered disability savings plan, they actually can receive back payment on the bond entitlement. And that happened when my brother opened up his RDSP. So when Cody applied for the disability tax credit, he was deemed to be disabled for many years prior to his application for DTC. So when he opened up his RDSP, as soon as he opened up his contract, he received the maximum of $11,000, and it was paid into his registered disability savings plan. So what it does is it allows 10 years of back payment plus current year. So without putting a penny into his RDSP, he received $11,000 right off the hop. So it was very, very life-changing for Cody, as it gave him a very nice nest egg really quickly when he opened up his registered disability savings plan. Now, when individuals want to take payments or make withdrawals from their registered disability savings plan, there's really two different types of payments that can be made. There's what we call a disability assistance payment, and that's a lump sum withdrawal that can be made at any time, as long as that bond and grant money has been in the RDSP for that 10-year period. So it can be requested at any age, and it's, just an on-demand request that the individual can make. There's also the ability for individuals to set up lifetime disability assistance payments, and that's a regularly scheduled payment that they would set up. They could ask for annual payments, monthly payments, whatever it is that they want, and that would be set up once, and it continues on until the end of life or until the funds are depleted. For the lifetime disability assistance payments, they have to begin by the end of the year the beneficiary turns age 60. So if you remember when I talked about contributions being made into an RDSP up until the age of 59, so at the end of age 59, or the end of the year when the individual turns age 59, they can't make any more contributions, because the following year they actually have to start making withdrawals from their registered disability savings plan. And the grant and bond payment, if you remember, I said those won't be paid into the plan after age 49. So that allows that grant and bond to mature for that 10-year period before an individual starts taking the mandatory lifetime disability assistance payments out of their RDSP. So there is a little bit of flexibility for individuals, but we often say that a lifetime disability assistance payment is kind of like a registered retirement income fund. Now, this doesn't have to wait until the individual turns age 60, but it is set up so that mandatory by age 60, they have to start taking the money out of their registered disability savings plan. When an individual takes payments out of their RDSP, it could be subject to withholding tax, where an individual might have a small portion or applicable withholding tax amount withheld at the time of the withdrawal. There could be repayment of grant and bond required if that grant and bond hasn't matured in the RDSP for a 10-year period. And that's what we refer to as the assisted holdback amount. And it's a calculation that is done at the financial institution to determine if there is a requirement to repay some funds if an individual has a life event or a special circumstance where they need the money and they have to take it out. But the financial institutions would be there to provide guidance and give them an explanation as to what the results would be if they did do the withdrawal. And then there are withdrawal limits possibly on payments, and it could be if it's in a regular year or a specified year, or if the plan is primarily government assisted, which means that the majority of the funds in there are grant and bond money versus contributions. But that too is all information that the financial institution would outline for individuals when they are doing a withdrawal. Now, the RDSP allows for special circumstances for individuals with a shortened life expectancy. And shortened life expectancy is defined under RDSP rules to be that the beneficiary the individual with the disability has a life expectancy of 5 years or less. And that has to be certified by a medical doctor or a nurse practitioner. Now, when an individual is diagnosed with shortened life, they have the ability to leave the plan as an RDSP and deem it to be a specified year, or they can categorize the registered disability savings plan to become a specified disability savings plan. And I'm going to explain those two options in a little bit more detail. So if an individual has a short life expectancy of 5 years or less, they can leave the plan as an RDSP in a specified year. And that does not restrict the amount of payments that the individual can take out of that RDSP, but it could require repayment of some of the grant and bond if that grant and bond hasn't matured in there for the 10-year period. But the individual also has the option to designate their RDSP as a specified disability savings plan. And that does not require any repayment of grant and bond. So even if it didn't mature in the RDSP for the 10-year period, there would not be a requirement to repay that to the federal government. But the federal government does put a cap on the amount that an individual can withdraw from their RDSP. And generally, it's about $10,000 per year. And then the payments have to be begin by the December 31st of the year following the specified disability savings plan designation, and that continues on until the contract depletes or the individual passes. So everybody's circumstances would be different, and again, it would be something that the beneficiary and or holder would want to discuss with their financial institution to determine what is the best scenario or the best option for the beneficiary of the registered disability savings plan. And then upon death of an RDSP beneficiary, the RDSP has to be closed by December 31st of the year following the year of death. If there is any Canada Disability Savings Grant or Canada Disability Savings Bond that was received in the plan in the previous 10 years, that would have to be repaid to Employment Social Development Canada or the CRA. And any remaining funds would have to be paid to the beneficiary's estate. They can't name beneficiaries to receive their RDSP funds. It has to be paid directly to the estate, and then the estate would distribute the assets as per their will or as per their instructions for distribution of the estate. And then the taxable portion of the payment would be reported as income to the beneficiary's estate for the year the payment is made. If you know of anyone that would be interested in opening up an RDSP, Concentra Trust can open RDSPs for individuals online. You can contact our client support area or call our 1-800 number. If you have a personal circumstance that you would like to discuss, I would be more than happy to have a discussion with anyone in regards to options for registered disability savings plans, share some of the experience that I went through when I helped my brother go through the process. My contact information is on the second slide beside my picture and bio. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to have a chat with you. And Jandy, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you. Now we talk about the Henson Trust, and a Henson Trust is a planning tool that's used in estate administration. So if you can go to the next slide, Selena will talk directly about Henson Trust and the origin and why they're important.
Absolutely. Jandy, I don't think that your camera's on.
Oh, I had it on. Okay. Technical glitches. Let me make sure it's on. Okay. Okay, am I on?
Yeah, you're back.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, oops.
Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is a Henson Trust? Henson Trusts are named after Mr. Henson. He and his adult daughter lived in Guelph, and his daughter was receiving ODSP income, Ontario Disability Income Plans. And Mr. Henson established an Antelope discretionary trust for his daughter, and ODSP concluded that Mr. Henson's daughter was not eligible for her provincial disability due to the trust value. So that decision was challenged, and the matter worked its way through the Ontario court system. Eventually, the Court of Appeal for Ontario ruled in favor of the Hensons, and the court found that the wording of the trust protected the assets, meaning his daughter was able to continue to receive disability income from the Ontario government, and hence the Henson Trust was born. So a Henson Trust is really designed to provide the financial support for persons with disabilities. The intent of the trust is to provide support without jeopardizing any government benefits like ODSP. For the trust to be considered a Henson Trust, it must be the beneficiary cannot demand funds from the trust, and payments from the trust are discretionary by the trustee only, meaning that the decision of how the funds are paid is from the trustee, and the language in the trust must be very specific, as the trustee must consider and understand the benefits allowed and how payments of the trust will impact any government subsidies or benefits. If the payments of the trust are greater than that's allowed, the government can in fact claw back ODSP and other benefit payments to the beneficiaries. I mean, there's always a limit to what can be paid out and the intention of how the funds are paid out. Next slide. So Henson Trust can be, there are different ways to create a Henson Trust. It can be created in the lifetime, known as the IVT Intervivus Trust or the Living Trust. And the most common way to create the trust is via a will or a testamentary trust. The key roles of the trust are again to protect and safeguard the benefits allowed through the government programs. And the trust does provide a top-up for any government programs while keeping the beneficial supports in place. The trust does remove the perception of control of assets by the beneficiary, meaning the beneficiary has no control or say in how the funds are allocated. For example, if the beneficiary has the maximum allowed in the bank account, and each province has a different maximum allowed that an individual can have, and how much savings if they can own real estate, the trust would pay out the trust would not pay out for rainy days or deposit to accounts directly. So if anyone wants information about the allowable amount per province, please reach out. More than happy to provide that information. But it is always important to remember that there are restrictions on how income can be received from the trust without jeopardizing eligibility or the income being received from the programs. Payments from the trust are to be disability related expenses, and they're subject to and not subject to limits. So disability related and not subject to limits for disability related. For instance, if the home needs to be customized for wheelchairs, then that's the role of the Henson Trust. But when expenses are not disability related, I had a client recently called in and wanted his Costco membership reimbursed. And that's an expense that should be coming from what's allowed through his disability benefits receiving from the government. So the trust did not pay for that Costco membership because it could be considered not related to his disability. So as a trustee of a Henson Trust, you have to be extra careful and cautious on how funds are paid out, when they're paid out, and also having the conversation with the beneficiary to ensure that they don't have an over amount in their bank accounts or investments or property ownership in their hands directly. So the trustee has to work hand in hand with the beneficiary to ensure that nothing can be compromised, because the clawback can be very significant if ODSP or any provincial government becomes aware that there are funds in their hands that could be utilized. Next slide. So in real summary, Henson Trust does allows for the maintenance of other government subsidy available for persons with disabilities. Funds funded by with investable assets, real estate, insurance, whatever that individuals have in their hands. It has to be at the limit where they can hold those assets. And again, each province has the limited what can be held. So it's good to know what that is before the trust is established and how the trust is established. So a lot of people say after age 65, there's no need for a Henson Trust, but there is still a need for Henson Trust after 65 because it is entirely discretionary and the trust assets do not count against seniors' income-related benefits, and the trustee can adjust payments from trust to supplement the beneficiary's transition from provincial disability support to federal pensions that are out there. So the need continue. The only downfall of the Henson Trust, like all trusts, is there's a 21-year deemed disposition. And every 21 years, trust has to look as if they sold all the assets, pay the taxes owing on any capital gains, and then continue for another 21 years. So that's the disadvantage of having a trust, but the advantages far outweigh what the disadvantages are because that beneficiary is protected and all the supplements that are offered by the provincial government is in full support, and the trustee should understand what those are. So if you are thinking of having a trustee name on a Henson Trust, consider that the person that you're appointing and whether or not they do have the ability and the knowledge to keep in line with the provincial needs and the provincial outlines and what is required for the individual receiving the benefits, because that's really important when managing the Henson Trust for individuals with disability. And that's it for me. And we move on if there are any questions. We do have our typical disclaimer that this is informational purposes only and not intended to be legal advice. But both Selena and I are very knowledgeable in this field, and we do offer support to anyone that has any questions or any comments to offer. We're more than happy to share our knowledge with you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Selena and Jandy. That was very informative. I always continue to learn stuff when you both share and share your knowledge with us. So appreciate that. We're in the Q&A zone right now. So I think I have a few questions for both of you as people. I encourage you to put any questions you have in the Q&A chat and we'll try to answer them for you here. If not, we will do a follow-up. But let's see. So I have a question here. Would medical expenses related to the disability be eligible for Henson Trust payments?
You see Selena looking at me, so she wants me to answer that one. Yes, they are eligible, but with disability payments, sometimes there are supplements from the government itself. So there'll be a top up to whatever is not paid out by government supplements. There should be.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you have anything to add, Selena? You're good? Okay. How can we plan ahead if decision-making abilities might change over time?
So I can comment on that for the Registered Disability Savings Plan. As individuals might be able to open up their own Registered Disability Savings Plan, but as their illness or their disability deteriorates their abilities, they may no longer be able to, manage everything on their own. They can have a qualified holder named at a later date, like their legal representative, etc. So there are options so that individuals can step in and assist individuals with the disability at a later date if needed.
Thanks, Selena. Now, this is a question for both of you, but it might be a challenging one. So since ALS tends to be an older person's disease, why do they require you to be 60 years old?
It is just the way the program was set up by the federal government. I've actually heard that quite often, and unfortunately, I've seen many individuals that missed applying for the RDSP because they weren't knowledgeable of the existence of the product, etc. So, there really is no rhyme or reason for it being 60 years of age, other than that's the parameters the federal government put on it when they implemented the program.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Selena. Um, Let me just see. What kinds of expenses can a trust help cover while protecting access to benefits?
I'll take that one. It's again, because pension trusts are fully discretionary, it depends on the decision of the trustee. And the first and foremost is not to compromise any benefits that the individual is eligible for. So as a trustee, you tend to want to think, is the expense disability related? And that's the foremost way to think. And if it's disability related, it will be considered to be paid from the Henson Trust, coupled with what's already in place to support these benefits.
Perfect. So while we're talking about Henson Trust, Jandy, this one's for you. What are the benefits of using a Henson Trust compared to giving assets directly?
And I've seen this too in my career that when assets are given to individual directly, it really compromises what benefits will be received. And people think of government benefits as just a monthly income. There's a whole spectrum of other benefits that are allowed under each provincial benefits allowance. So the disadvantage of giving the money in the hand, the person who's receiving the funds may not know what to do with money, may not know how to manage funds, and it's open for abuse and other people taking advantage to have that money directly in their hands. It also allows for any money that is being received or any benefits being received is going to be clawed back or paid back to the government, and the stoppage of that money, a stoppage of those benefits to for the individual. And once that money runs out directly in their hands, they have to reapply for these benefits again. And that's a slowdown. The advantage of having the money, disadvantage having that money in the trust, it's very limited to what they can receive, but that trust is really intended for protectionism rather than having a steady cash flow. It's really to protect the individual and the subsidies being received.
Very good, Shandy. You have a hot topic here because another question has come in about Henson Trust. So for the Henson Trust, when is it set up and who can be a trustee? Or what if there is no family member to be a trustee? So I
Okay.
don't know if you have any examples to make it
Okay.
clear. Yeah.
I have several examples. So for Hanson Trust can be set up in two ways. Well, say I have a child who has a disability and I have some money set aside. I can put that aside in an intervivals trust, a living trust, and position it as a Hanson Trust for my child, and it will continue after I pass away. Or it can be set up under your will. There are a lot of great law firms that just specializes in Henson Trust and the drafting because the language has to be specific. So in your will, you can create a Henson Trust and it only comes into effect once you pass away. Then the trust is established once you pass away. You can name anyone or anybody to be the trustee of a Henson Trust, but I will always caution someone if you're going to name an individual, that person has to be committed to act because it can be a trust for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. They have to be knowledgeable about what is required provincially for the benefits to be allowed, and they must be ensured that they protect that Henson Trust and not quote unquote tainted for it to become a non-Henson trust where that trust will be looked at as income in the hands of the individual. A lot of individuals do tend to use trust companies because the longevity, but trust companies tend not to act in Henson Trust with nominal sizes because of the expense to run a Henson Trust. So if there's a specific example out there that someone wants to discuss, more than happy to go through scenarios with them and where the best way to put it through.
Thanks, Jandy. So not to leave Selena alone there, I have a question for you, Selena. This is probably to our DSP. So if we are not sure what we qualify for, what is a good first step to get started?
I would recommend going on to the CRA website and getting a copy of the disability tax credit eligibility form. Because as you go through, the questions are answered by a medical practitioner, but you would see what would qualify for a disability, what it is that the federal government is basing its qualifications on, etc. So have a look at the form, go through that, and have the discussion with your medical practitioner. The doctors, I know when I took Cody in to do his disability tax credit eligibility form, the doctor had seen the form several times, right? And he knew how to fill in the form, etc. So yeah, just grab the form, have a look at it, and speak with your doctor or your medical practitioner.
Perfect, perfect. Thanks,
Can I
Selena.
also add also, doing this role for many years, I see there are a lot of benefits out there people not aware of that can really help families out. So check into what is out there. And again, Selena is excellent of putting you in the right direction. I know she's helped a lot of people for me to put them in the right direction to see what are you eligible for and how can you get supported.
Perfect, perfect. And I was going to say, I don't think there's any other questions there, but if anyone has questions after the webinar, feel free to send them to us and we will try to get answers for you. But I don't know, Selena or Jandy, if you have any last words to share with our audience today that you'd like to share.
I can go first, Selena, because I tend to talk a lot. I the questions that were asked, I want to be abundantly cautious of planning. Planning is really important, especially if you have a child with disabilities and want to protect that child in their lifetime before death and after death. And a question that came up, and I want to jump in to say, but decision making. If there's a power of attorney in place, ensuring that's a part of what is out there also to make decisions and speak for your child. I work with a lot of clients and they say, you know, I just don't want to hand this over to anyone because as parents we become very emotionally attached and no one can manage and treat our children the way we do. So it's having conversations and your trusted advisors and people in your life that you want to take over when we're no longer here to manage.
Right, and I will just add, I encourage you to share the information about the Registered Disability Savings Plan today with anyone that you think might benefit from it. As I said, I've seen firsthand how it can be a game changer for individuals with disabilities. And I encourage you, please share the information, make people aware that this benefit actually exists.
Perfect, perfect. Well, I want to thank both of you for sharing your expertise. I think we've learned a lot, and you probably set a lot of the viewers, participants on a journey to their discovery for their own personal investigation on what they need to do in their situation. So I thank everyone for joining us today and spending time. We hope you found today's webinar insightful and informative. A survey link is posted in the chat to provide your feedback. But if you can't get to that link now, in the next day or two, keep an eye on your inbox because you'll receive an email from us with the presentation slides and recording and also the survey. And we definitely love to hear your thoughts because from the last two webinars we hosted, this is how we came up with today's topics. We want to hear what you want to hear more about and provide that information for you. So stay tuned for more details for the next webinar, which will be in November during Make a Will month. And until then, enjoy your summer. Take care of yourself and each other. And we will see you in a few months. Have a great day, everyone, and bye-bye.